everyone. Welcome back to another soul stirring episode of Pleasure Principles, where we don't just talk about the intimacy, but we feel into it. Yes, I'm your host Avik, and today we are diving into a realm that's as mystical as it is deeply human, the dance between divine feminine and the divine masculine, and how this conscious interplay can transform the way we love, touch, and relate. So, joining me today is someone whose very presence feels like a deep breath for the soul. I'm talking about Michael Tierno. So, welcome to the show, Michael.
Hi, thanks for having me back.
Amazing, amazing. So, Michael, before we start delving deep into this topic, I'll quickly love to introduce you to all the listeners. Dear
Sure.
listeners, dear listeners, Michael is a transformational guide, a co founder of Men of Integrity, and a bridge between ancient wisdom and modern masculinity. So, from guiding expanded state journeys to hosting the rites of passage retreats, he helps individuals move from trauma to the truth and also from self doubt to sacred power. Yes. So, dear listeners, I will not take much of your time. Buckle up because today we are not just talking about the relationship, we are actually redefining them. So, welcome to the show again, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Amazing, amazing. So, Michael, I'll quickly jump into the discussion. So
No,
I'd love to understand, like, what does conscious love mean to you? I mean, uh, how do the divine feminine and the masculine influence the? I mean, this definition definitely, yeah.
sure. So, divine feminine is basically, the way I think about it, none of this is necessarily like scientific, but it's very much cross cultural. All cultures that I know of have sort
Mm.
of differentiation between something that they think of as divine masculine, and something they think of as the divine feminine. Right, and that's actually what we call it in the West, right? The Hebrews call it the masculine principle and the feminine principle, um, and
Mm.
I like the Hindu idea of Shiva and Shakti working together
Yeah.
in the Taoist yin and yang. There's just two sort of divine entities that make up everything, but everything has
Mm.
a little more of one and a little less of the other, like kind of in balance. And and even in language, we in some languages, Romance languages, like Spanish, Italian, they have some nouns are masculine and some nouns are feminine,
Yes.
and it's related to whether something is sort of that masculine principle or feminine principle generally. And how it works with, how I believe it works with regards to relationships is that while we as men and women have both of these sort of archetypical constructs that create us in us, there's nobody that's
Yeah.
just masculine. That would be ridiculous. Or no one that's just
Mm.
feminine. There's a lot that I could say about this, but as it relates to relationships, whether someone is more masculine or it aligns more with kind of the divine masculine or the divine feminine, leads to a lot of how they relate in relationships, what they want in relationships, and what they need to feel, you know, completely like what their needs are in the relationship. And these things do have to do with evolution, and um, men and women are really, there are some differences between us, even though sometimes people are trying to say in this modern context that everybody is exactly the same in all things. There are some differences. They're fundamentally important for what our roles were in early parts of our evolutionary heritage, and
Mm.
how those things manifest now in terms of, how what we need as men or what we need as women in relationship in order to really feel that the relationship is secure are different. And we can say what those
Mm.
things are.
So,
I'll give you room
so
to respond.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. So, like, from there, I was just thinking, like, uh, have you noticed that um, people often confuse actually with this word like conscious with the perfect. So what according to you, I mean, how do you guide couples through this messiness of conscious love?
Well, with regards to when I
Mhm.
teach this stuff, I'm usually talking to guys, right?
Okay.
Um, so what I tell guys is, or men, is that what a woman needs in a relationship or in order to feel, you know, real conscious loves is different from what a guy needs in a relationship
Mhm.
to feel really connected with their partner. So for women, the main thing is trust and safety, and they kind of fall along that sort of continuum. So if a woman can really trust her partner, to have her best interest in mind, right,
Yeah.
then she will feel safe around him. And then the idea is if she feels really safe around him, she'll allow him to sort of lead him into, conscious lovemaking. There's no kind of like fear that he's not going to listen to her
Mhm.
or not take care of her or put her in an unsafe situation. So when she really
Sure.
feel so for her needs in the relationship, in order to like really be, we're talking about conscious love, she needs to feel fully trusting and fully safe. And guys are a little bit different. So guys really want to feel useful and needed, right? So they want to have some utility because that's kind of what we kind of evolved for. Is that we're kind of dopamine monsters. So to the
Yes.
extent that we feel, to the extent that we
Mhm.
feel useful and needed in a relationship by a
Mhm.
partner, and she feels, and we get response from that utility, we feel like really valued in a relationship. And some people will call this, oh, that's I was speaking with a client yesterday about this, and she was saying, "Oh, guys need to feel respect." And I was saying, "Yes, but respect needs to be earned, right?" So
Mhm.
if you as a man allow your woman to know that she's safe around you, right,
Yes.
and she makes you feel useful and needed, by definition, you're going to feel respect. So it's
Exactly.
the respect that's not earned isn't respect. It's usually comes out of fear. So, so it's a little tied in there. But
Mhm.
I think that feeling of respect has to do when one feels useful and needed, valued in the relationship
Mm.
for what they, can bring to the table. And for women, it's all about in order to open up that yoni, it's all about feeling safe and trusting.
Exactly, exactly. Very, very truly said, I say, and I have noticed that in my own life also, conscious love isn't always calm. It's actually quite confronting, and it demands presence, not the perfection. So, yeah, very, very true.
Absolutely, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly. Yeah, you're saying something, please.
I was going to say that lots of times part of that trust and safety for women is,
Mm.
women have stereotypically and often true, they have a lot more emotional bandwidth than men in terms of, being able to, you know, anybody who's been in a relationship, sometimes
Mm.
any man who's been in a relationship, sometimes it's like the woman has a lot of like emotional
Mm.
response sometimes.
Yeah.
And we, unfortunately or fortunately, or however we've evolved as men, maybe there's some societal factors in there too. Sometimes we don't know what to do with it.
Mm.
And typically, in terms of what you were just talking about, presence, for example, sometimes guys get a little scared of that emotional response and they withdraw. And they can withdraw either out of the relationship, temporarily, or they can withdraw into alcohol or
Mm.
marijuana or porn or anything that kind of like meets that dopamine addiction without staying present with their partner and letting them know that their emotional response, whatever it may be, is, fine and that we can handle it and that they're not too much for
Mm.
us, and to be in there and work it through communicatively and mentally and emotionally and spiritually, be there for her so that she can go through her experience and then
Mm.
she comes out of it. And that takes ultimate presence, right? That takes absolute presence to be able to not withdraw and be in, in what might feel at the moment like an intense situation for a guy, and not just be like, oh, I'm out of here. I'm going to go play some video games or whatever that is. Uh, I can't handle you in terms of I can't deal with your emotions, which in essence is saying that you is saying to the woman that she cannot trust you to be here with her during when she's going through a hard time. And that's also a violation of that trust. And she can't feel safe then in the future to really express herself as how she needs to be expressed. And that leads to fissures in the relationship as well.
True. Exactly. And also, like, if we talk about the sacred sexuality, how can embracing the polarity reignite the passion and deepen the connection, even in the long-term partnerships as well?
Yeah. So there's a lot I could say about that.
Mhm.
If if we're meeting each other's needs, right?
Mm.
Um, Kind of lost the thread of the question, but if we're meeting each other's needs and the guy feels like he's of use to the relationship, right?
Mm.
And the woman feels fully trusting and safe in the relationship.
Yeah.
The conscious love is going to happen there because everybody feels good in a relationship.
Yes.
It's when we start, I think resentment and contempt are the two poison pills to any relationship, and that starts happening
Yeah.
when the woman feels that, or the feminine partner, because this isn't just heteronormative, right? I
Mm.
think all relationships generally have some kind of polarized dynamic where one of the partners, even a homosexual relationship, is a little more feminine than the other, or is aligned more with the divine feminine than the divine
Yeah.
masculine, one with the other. But when we're meeting each other's needs, then it feels good to be in that relationship, continues to feel good to be in that relationship. And part of that is, sexual expression. And if we're really in that space, it allows that is conscious love, is to like um, be co-creating this relationship, this narrative of life together, where each person is both where each person in the relationship is both growing in the relationship and growing individually. I think that's another really important thing to say when we try and a lot of folks, try and stifle the other person. They're worried that if they grow, that they will grow apart, and I don't think that's true. I think that very importantly, each person in a relationship needs to be doing their own growth at the same time as working together in the relationship. Why is that? I think Nietzsche said something like marriage or a long-term partnership is like the longest conversation of your life.
Yeah.
And if we're not growing, each of us individually in the relationship, we're going to kind of run out of stuff to say that's interesting to the other partner. And this happens a lot of time. You hear of old people, older couples that have not continued their growth journey in life, and they, might just sit
Mm.
across from each other, and they're in presence with one another, but they don't have anything more to say because everything's been said because they've stopped growing at some point in time. So, to the extent that we can continue our individual growth process,
Mm.
continue to deepen, find new hobbies, new passions, new things to be excited about as individuals. And when we come back together in a relationship, we have things to share with one another and keep that longest conversation of our lives interesting and have something to say. So all of that is important. Continued growth individually, continued growth in the relationship, and meeting each other's needs. The men's needs being of utility and need and feeling needed, and the women's continually feeling trustful and safe in the relationship.
True. Exactly. And like, do you think that overemphasis on equality in relationships sometimes flattens the natural energetic tension between the partners?
Well, it depends on what you mean by equality, right?
Okay.
Here in the West, there was a
Mm.
because you're in India, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Is that right? Yeah. So here in the West, there's and I guess it's got to be a global phenomenon. There's been a trend to say that men and women are the same. Now that's different from being equally valued, equally, equally, what is it? Equally worthy of living a good life. Yes,
Mm.
100%. We're all equally worthy of living a good life. We all are deserving of happiness and joy. But in terms of, if you're talking about what I think you're talking about, which is the same, meaning that
Mm.
men and women are exactly the same. It's just the differences between us are only socially constructed. That is bullshit. Excuse me. Um, we are fundamentally different in so many ways. Um, one of the ways that I can tell you that we're fundamentally different
Mm,
is in terms of just size. So, and we can do this logical train, right?
mm,
So men on average are 30 to 50% stronger than women on average. Just talking about pure physical strength. A 30-year-old man is going to
mm,
be able to lift, approximately 30 to 50% more. How do I know this? You say, "Oh, how do you know this, Michael?" Okay. In the sport called CrossFit, that's very popular around the world, the men's weights are about 30% across the board
mm,
um, heavier than the women's weights. The exercises are 30% more difficult in terms of like absolute power output than the women's. And the time it takes the most fittest human beings in the world, the most fit woman and the most fit man to do, for the man to do 30% more uh, uh,
mm.
physical intensity is the same, right? So is this
Yeah.
good or bad? It's neither.
Mm,
It's just you know what men evolved for was different from what women evolved for. Women didn't need to tackle take down a deer with their with a knife, so that
mm,
the village could eat.
yeah.
So imagine now being in a world like now you're imagine yourself, and I'd like every man to imagine himself in a world where 50% of the population was about 50% stronger than you. How would that feel? You'd be in kind of a state of like of one down in terms of physical ability to keep yourself safe everywhere.
Mm,
So based on that, there's going to be all kinds of psychological differences, all kinds of the physical differences, emotional differences in terms of like lots of times guys won't don't appreciate that level of safety that's required for women. Like those, oh, just go to your car by yourself. I'm not going to walk you to your car. It's fine. It's safe out here, right? It's safe for
mm,
you because you are on the side of the population that's 50% stronger than the other side of the population.
yeah.
A woman oftentimes doesn't feel safe because she knows that there's, people out there that are much stronger than her just by
Mm,
no fault of her own. So,
mm,
and then in terms of the hormones and how we even relates in all ways hormonally, we know that
mm,
from research in that this isn't just socially constructed, these differences between men and women, because there's research that shows this research is fascinating. Shows trans men, so transsexual men and transsexual women who've done a full transition, meaning that they've had all the hormones adjusted in their body. So originally a woman now has the hormones of a man, and her
yeah.
experience of the world. So these people actually have like a hormonal soup in their bodies that they've
Mm,
experienced life as in the hormone soup of a woman and experienced life in the hormone soup of a man, and they say, wow, everything is different in terms of the experience of the world, what they find interesting. Our hormones are really have so much impact on our experience.
mm,
So women who transition to become men, right, their emotional bandwidth is lower. And, some people would like you to think that this is just a social construction, but really it's a matter of hormones and biology. Um, and
mm,
vice versa. Men who start taking hormone replacements therapy to transition to be like a woman, all of a sudden they're highly more emotional. They can feel more. Even where they feel the erogenous zones in their bodies, men who have transitioned to become to be women, even the erogenous zones in their bodies is different. So it's less focused on the genitals and more whole body. So it's very interesting. There's absolute differences between men and women. I think we dishonor each other when we don't acknowledge these differences and we don't appreciate them and we don't work with them. And
mm.
I think it's doing everybody a disservice.
Wow. That's really, really amazing, I have to say. And also like this might sound contradictory, but it's actually not. Like
Mm.
uh some people argue that framing love through masculine and feminine is very outdated or maybe binary. So what's your response to that?
I think if you well, we can run into problems when we just only allow men to be uh, to we only allow men to be masculine, right? And we tell them any of the feminine characteristics like their intuition, flexibility, expressiveness,
mm,
gentleness, healingness. If we tell them to pull those things are not masculine, that they shouldn't be part of their being, and they retract away from the divine feminine that's within them, what's the opposite of an intuition? It's like authoritarian. What's the opposite of being flexible, which is a divine feminine characteristic? It's controlling. Instead of being expressive, you become cold. Instead of being gentle, violent. Instead of being healing, cruel, right?
mm,
When we tell men that they cannot have any of the feminine attributes that are so much a part of being human and part of
mm,
love and part of this softer, gentle, kind part of being human,
yeah,
they retract into something that has nothing to do with
mm,
the masculine. They retract into what here in the West we call the toxic masculine. The opposite of the
okay,
feminine is a toxic masculine. The opposite of the masculine is something called the wounded feminine. So instead of being logical, responsible, self-aware, action-oriented, and unflappable, if we tell a little girl, for example, you shouldn't have these
mm,
masculine characteristics, these things of the masculine. Let's not say that they are male, but they are of the masculine. She becomes
mhm,
irrational, has a victim sense of the world, like the world happens to her, not she happens to the world. She has an unarticulated sense of self. She's ineffectual, hysterical, disingenuous. These are those. This is the this is when we tell, for example, a woman that she cannot have masculine attributes. So she retracts against that.
mm,
She can't do anything for herself. Everybody suffers.
true,
So we need to honor both of these energies or both of these archetypes in both men and women, and also acknowledge that men and women have it in different capacities.
mm,
And when we do that, two specialists
mm,
that are better than two people who are just average at everything, right? If you're trying to build a company, you want somebody who's a specialist in marketing and a specialist in engineering, let's say, or these specialists. You don't want someone that's kind of like mediocre at everything. And in relationships, it's the same thing. Males are, in general, have more of the divine masculine. They specialize in some things, but they also have, they're not, a man isn't incapable of holding and loving a baby, right? That would be ridiculous to
mm,
say that. But sometimes we tell men that they can't do that. And that's terrible because then what do we lead these guys with? Or you can only be, angry or okay and stuff down your feelings and all
mm,
that. And that leads to, a lot of mental illness and trauma and suffering for men. Same thing with women. If we can't let a women express themselves to have some passion in their life in terms of being interested in something, because that we think that that's a masculine trait that they should only be at home holding the babies, then that's also
mm,
they can't grow either. So we need to honor these energies in both. They are in different capacities, but we need to honor them in both, and we need to let people come as they are, spiritually, emotionally, and mentally.
true. Very, very true. Yep. Ooh, that's really lovely. That's really lovely. And um, any suggestion you want to have for our listeners today?
I think the suggestion that I've been really harping on lately
Mm,
is for people to slow down when they're talking to with regards to their love partner, to slow down and to really listen, not try and be right, but really try and understand where their partner is coming from. And this requires us to slow down and deeply listen to our partner so that we're not just waiting to, give our perspective.
mm,
This is just basic, what they call like nonviolent communication in therapy terms, right? Just slow down, take time for one another,
mm,
don't be rushing off work, 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 or, you know, get so caught up in whatever you're doing personally that you
mm,
don't make time for your partner. Um, we all if we want to stay in a relationship, we need to make time to communicate, to unpack our day, unpack our feelings, what's going on with each other. um, and if we do that, we will remain close. It's when we start drifting apart due to lack of communication, due to rushing around, due to not taking time for one another, due to not taking each other into primary regard, and assuming that each other has the best interest of the relationship and each other at heart. and that misunderstandings do happen, but but through communication, we can work these out.
Mhm.
Then people I don't think would drift apart quite as much and start to be resentful and contemptuous of one another.
Exactly. Exactly true. Wow. Oh, amazing. Um, So if you are anything like me, you are walking away from this conversation feeling expanded, dear listeners, maybe a little exposed, but definitely more alive. Yeah. So Michael, thank you so much for showing us that conscious love isn't about being perfect. It's all about being present, being open, and sometimes being broken in all the right ways. So something
Yeah.
sacred can emerge. So, yeah, definitely. And for all the beautiful listeners today, if this episode has stirred something in you, then don't keep it aside. Lean into it. Revisit like how you show up in love, in your body and in the mirror. So and if you have already if you're already to explore further, check out Michael's work through Men of Integrity or Heart Sanctuary, and you just might find that permission you didn't know you needed. So, with this hope, until next time, keep choosing pleasure with purpose. And this is your host, Avik, signing off. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vic.